Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Car Mechanic Tries to Belittle Me, So I Go Far to Prove Otherwise. A couple of years ago, my car trunk was badly dented after someone hit me from behind. He was texting and didn't realize I stopped at an intersection. Obviously, his insurance agreed to cover all damages. So, I brought my car, which was merely 4 months old, back to the original dealership for repairs. Important for later, the repair center is right next to a big lot where they stored the cars that were not on display. Fast forward a few weeks later, the repairs were done, and they called me to pick up the car. During an inspection to make sure everything was fixed, I discovered that the trunk lock latch was not working properly. I mentioned this to the mechanic who was inspecting my car with me, and I will never forget what he said to me. Quoting his exact words, he said, "Ma'am, with your 4 doors shut and all your windows up, it creates a pressure which makes it difficult to open your trunk door." I was speechless for a few seconds, then told him I may be clueless about cars, but that's not how my trunk door functioned prior to the accident. He kept trying to convince me that I was wrong and that nothing was wrong with the latch, and I kept insisting there was something wrong. The supervisor saw us arguing and came over to ask what's wrong. The mechanic explained to him that I refuse to accept that nothing is wrong with the door latch. The supervisor then told me I can walk around the storage lot and open some of the trunks of the same model car as mine to feel that mine works the same. He then asked the mechanic to walk with me and added, "As a matter of fact, she can pop open every trunk." Malicious compliance ensues. It took a while, but I opened every trunk, and with each car, the mechanic would say, "See? Same as yours," and I would reply with, "No." Needless to say, after our little adventure, the mechanic was getting quite impatient with me. We walked back to the supervisor, and the mechanic annoyingly explained that I was still not convinced. The supervisor then suggested that the mechanic take apart the lock and show me the working mechanism to prove that everything is fine. From the surprised look on his face when I said yes, I believe he was expecting me to back down and just agree everything was fine. Well, with the locking mechanism exposed, the mechanic pressed the open button once, and the latch moves like normal. He looks at me with a smug face. He tried it again to prove me wrong a second time, and behold, the latch jams. He tried again a third time and no movement. He had to jimmy it a bit in order to get it to function again. All of a sudden, he just walks off. Of course, I asked him where he's going. He turns and tells me he's going to order me a new lock. Being disgusting, I replied with, "But why do that when with my 4 doors shut?" And before I can finish, he told me to please stop and that he's already doing what needs to be done. I smugly smiled and kept my mouth shut. Next one is titled, "I'm sorry for forgetting your discount, I'll double it next time." This happened just last night as I was about to empty out my register, and it made my night, my supervisor's night, and that of my other clerk. Background. I work in the gift shop of an average-sized casino, and most of what we sell is overpriced clothes, costume jewelry, and cigarettes. For the last 2.5 years I've worked here. I have not worked a Tuesday. On Tuesday, we offer a 10% discount on all non-tobacco products, and it's a discount I always forget about unless a guest asks about it because it's not something I think about. Last night, 2 elderly women came in and made a mess of everything they touched. Magnets knocked off their display, our mugs shuffled around, clothes knocked off hangers, our ice cream freezer left wide open. My other clerk and I were basically following them around and cleaning up after children. Eventually, they split up, and one went to look at greeting cards, and one looked at our ring display. I helped them find the right size and buy her ring, which came out to $25.01, but I didn't give her a discount. Her friend was rung up by my other coworker, and she asked about the discount, so he gave it to her. My guest slammed her receipt down on the counter and asked me why I didn't give her the discount if it's Tuesday. I apologized and told her I honestly forgot. I explained it wasn't my normal shift, and I didn't think about applying it, which is the honest truth. So, she leaned over the counter, pulled down her mask, and asked me, "What are you going to do to fix this?" As the senior clerk with a trusting supervisor, I have a tiny amount of ability in the shop. So, I offered her 2 free candy bars, which would have been $3.50 where her discount would have been $2.50. She didn't like that offer. So, I offered her a free soda or juice. She got mad that I offered her a drink when she was already carrying one. After a few more attempts, ice cream, pens, clearance items, etc., I just called my supervisor who came up and spoke with her. With the current global situation, we cannot accept any returns or exchanges. To make sure this does not happen, supervisors and below have had this access temporarily revoked from the point of sales system. The guest wanted my supervisor to void the transaction and charge it again. She got more upset when he explained to her that he couldn't. There is literally nothing he can do to change a transaction once it's been completed. He doesn't have the access, and she was choosing to not understand what he was saying. So, she started to insult us, calling us incompetent, asking how many other guests I've screwed over today, saying I'd be fired if I wasn't a native. I'm not. Then she demanded my supervisor give her a note saying that she gets her 10% off on her next purchase, and he laughed at her because nobody would honor that. Not willing to leave without some victory, she asked if she could just have a 20% discount on the next item she bought. My supervisor agreed to say, if it gets you out of my shop sooner, I'll make it 25% off. We don't have a way to apply a 20% discount, and we can't stack the 10%, but we have a 25% house discount usually used for employees or guests we really like. After a few more insults directed at me and some under-the-breath comments from my supervisor, she returned with a pair of earrings that rang up for $16.30-ish and got them with their discount, which I took a highlighter to so there would be no confusion on her receipt that she owned us retail employees. I wished her a fantastic evening, and she made some comment about me not scalping anyone in the parking lot. She spent $38 to get a $3 and some change discount just because I forgot to give her a discount on a crappy piece of costume jewelry. My only regret is that I won't be there to see when, if reality hits her. Next one is titled, Won't Hurry and Fix Your Mistake. Free phone for me then. In late 2008, AT&T sold refurbished iPhones for cheap, just in time for the holiday season. I heard they'd be doing this a few months ahead of time, so I saved some money to get myself one. The rest of the story will highlight my fiscal irresponsibility, so I'll make the disclaimer here that I was a dumb kid, yada, yada, yada. The caveat was that you had to pay in full, but the phone was only $350-ish. So, my phone ships, and the money leaves my bank account. I had maybe $50 left in my account at the time, but my next check would be in a week later, plus Christmas money was coming from family soon after, so not too big a deal. Until the day my phone arrives, there's a second charge for a second phone. I contact AT&T about it, but there's nothing they can do until I get the phone and ship it back to them, and only if they receive it in the exact same condition will they refund my money, and only a week after they get it. Here I am now with this pending transaction, a second phone en route, and staring down overdraft fees I can't really afford. The second phone arrives. I call AT&T to see if I could just drop it off at a local store and get my money back. No go. I Karen out, asking for higher and higher managers, all to get told by all of them the same thing, nothing they can do, etc. Until I reach Brad, who tells me the reason they can't do anything is because they don't know why I got a second shipment since their records show only one order. A light goes off in my head. I get Brad's direct number and head to the bank. I talk to my bank's manager, I knew him socially, and give him the rundown of what I'm planning to do. He's in. I call Brad, get him on speakerphone with the bank manager in the room, and do this. Me, hey Brad, is there still nothing you can do? Brad, no, Kairako. You have to mail it back to us before we can do anything. M, but you only have the one order on record, right? B, that's right. M, $350.99 for a phone which y'all charged me for on the 12th of February 2008, B, correct. M, and no order data for this pending charge, B, correct. M, well, I'm sitting with bank manager at bank, and he's ready to dispute the charges and refund me the money. Since you've admitted you don't have an order to back up the charges, it's a dispute you won't win. Plus, I'll just keep this extra phone, free of charge, unless you can let me return it to a store today for an immediate refund. B, silence. B, let me double check. Single quote. A few minutes later, Brad begrudgingly okayed the immediate refund. I brought the second device to a store and was refunded the money. There were no overdraft fees since the refund and the charge went through the same day. Next one is titled, "Can't spell my name correctly? Guess I won't pay taxes." So, this one dates back from years ago when you would fill your income statement manually, like with a pen on a form. In those days, in my country, we didn't have a withholding tax system, but you would pay in a year, say 2007, the taxes on your income of the year 2006. Of course, the form would come by mail pre-filled with name and details and also some quite accurate amounts because the state knows already pretty well how much you make. My family name is a bit complex, being multi-part, and with unusual letter clusters in the middle. Mistakes are understandable, but you would expect the Revenue Service to be exact on that matter. Unfortunately, they weren't. They kept misspelling it every year on the form, and on all the subsequent forms, tax statement, tax returns, etc., they would mail me, despite my correcting it manually every year on my income statement. In black, then in red, then the following year with neon red Sharpies. Then 1 year later, adding a sticky note. Then adding a whole letter. Then adding a letter and copies of my ID as proof, etc. But they weren't budging. It was quite irritating because the tax statement has to be shown on several occasions when you interact with the state administration or justice. Everybody would notice the discrepancy. Everyone was understanding that it was obviously a mistake from the Revenue Service, but it was still annoying on so many levels, the most basic of which being a matter of respect for my identity. After 10 or 12 years of them not taking notice of my notes and corrections, upon receiving a payment notice still misspelled, I went in person to my local Revenue Service office and asked to speak with someone about that issue. I made it very clear to the clerk that they were wrong. He was adamant that they were correct, like I wouldn't know my own name, and added, for good measure, that he couldn't change my name in their systems because he didn't have access to that, blah, blah. I was having none of it, so, cue malicious compliance. Me, so, you said you were positively, absolutely right, about my name's spelling? Clerk, yes. Me, I shall, therefore, stop paying my taxes. I am not the person on your forms. And there's no way you can come to me asking for that tax money since the person on your forms doesn't live at that address, and in fact, does not exist. Clerk, mouth is gaping, eyes are so wide open they're going to pop out. Me, but in case you need that tax money, you know how to write my actual name. And I left with a smirk. I actually did not pay the tax installment. In those days, you paid your taxes in 3 installments over the year. 2 weeks later, I got a reminder letter without the 10% penalty normally owed for late payment and with my name correctly spelled. Shouldn't have wasted so many Sharpies over the years. Next one is titled, "Refuse a delivery before a holiday weekend? You'll have to wait until Tuesday then." I was talking with an old boss that I used to work for. I'm at a different company now but left on good terms, and remembered this. I drive semi, and at the time, I worked delivering milk and other products to grocery stores. All days were the same except for Saturday. On Saturday, my last stop was at a Walmart, and I didn't like dealing with one of the people who checked in deliveries. They had 3 people who rotated being in charge on Saturday. So, this happened early on a Saturday morning over Labor Day weekend in 2009. Because of the holiday weekend, stores took larger amounts than normal because of the holiday on Monday. Everything went smoothly at the first 3 stops, but the last didn't. When I arrived at the docks that normally had 1 or 2 open, there was a line of trucks waiting. I wasn't surprised and don't mind waiting because I get paid for waiting. About a half hour later, it was my turn to get a dock. So, I backed in and then went inside to see the witch, as people called her. She was busy with a soda delivery, and I went about collecting the empty crates and put on my trailer after pulling the incoming dairy to the trailer tail. Walmart loads of cooler or frozen items are temperature checked before being accepted. So, you leave it on the trailer until they are ready to check your load in. So, it's finally my turn to be checked in, and I open the trailer door and start pulling their order out. Which, put that back on your truck. I have beer and soda that need to go in first. Me, I'm not leaving until you check it or refuse it. Holding the invoice out to her. She signed and dated it refused with no reason for refusing. I put everything back on and secured it. then pulled off the dock and parked out of the way, then took a picture of the invoice and texted my boss it before calling her. I told her what happened, and I already know that store will be out of milk this afternoon. Boss: so, it was never tempted? Me: correct, so when they call later looking for the milk, I'll tell them it was refused for no reason and check the cameras. Boss: well, they're not getting any till Tuesday now. Don't worry, you're covered. So, I took and put the product back into the plant cooler in the good product return area. I didn't hear anything until Tuesday when I returned from the day's route. Boss: you were right, they ran out about 2 in the afternoon and called in a panic. I told them what happened, and I'm not paying a driver double time to fix their mistake and check the security cameras. So, Saturday comes, and I expect to be cussed at both by the dock people and the management of the Walmart because of last weekend's disaster. Instead, I was greeted with smiles and thanks. The manager showed up also. It seems that was the mistake that he was waiting for to fire the witch. Next one is titled, Demand My Birth Certificate? It'll be in a language you don't know. When I first graduated from college, I moved to a nearby state for a new job. I'm in the US. Because I am a civic-minded person, and because a presidential election was coming up, I wanted to register to vote in my new state. In those days before internet, you had to go to the city hall of the city in which you resided and fill out the paperwork at the office of the registrar of voters. I only needed my driver's license and/or social security card to do so. The election came and went, and I voted, so all was fine. Or so I thought. About 2 weeks after the national presidential election, I received a phone call. It was the registrar of voters from the city in which I lived. She had apparently finally gotten around to actually reading my voter registration and now had decided that she needed more information. She informed me that I was not eligible to vote, as I had been born in another country. I explained to her that, while I was indeed born in another country, I was born to 2 American parents, and thus, by birth, was an American citizen. She paused, and then told me I had to bring in my naturalization papers to show her. I explained to her that I have no naturalization papers because I have never been naturalized. I'm an American citizen at birth. Remember that the registrar of voters is supposedly a person whose job it is to know the rules about voter eligibility. She insisted that I needed naturalization papers. I reminded her that children born to an American parent, only one is actually needed to be a citizen, are automatically American citizens. Moreover, while some countries of one's birth might provide dual citizenship, the country of my birth, Switzerland, does not. So, we went back and forth for a while. She doubled down and kept insisting that I needed naturalization papers while I tried to explain US citizenship laws. I also pointed out to her that if she believed voter fraud had occurred, it was too late anyway, as I had already voted. Finally, she said I had to bring in those papers or my birth certificate within 2 weeks, or I'd be expunged from the voter rolls. Here's where malicious compliance comes in. When an American baby is born abroad, her parents are supposed to report the birth at the nearest US embassy or consulate so that a consular report of birth abroad (CRBA) can be issued as an official record of the child's claim to US citizenship or nationality. I have one of those. It's written in English. But the registrar of voters didn't ask for my CRBA. Nope. She demanded my birth certificate. So, that's what I brought into her. The beautiful birth certificate is written entirely in French, which I was pretty sure she could not read. I gave it to her, just as she had asked. As I did, I asked her if she knew French and, no surprise, she did not. And then I watched her try to read it. She studied that piece of paper for about 2 minutes, and knowing that I had complied with her ridiculous request, finally just stammered out an, okay. This is fine. It's not much, but I enjoyed her reaction. She had no way of knowing what it was that I presented to her, but I gave her exactly what she demanded. In retrospect, who knows what I could have shown to her. But that's what happens when bureaucrats get a little taste of power, more than their small-minded brains can handle. Last one is titled, You Want to Flaunt Stupid Rules at a then soon-to-be lawyer. 2 can play this game. I was in my final year of law school. As part of our curriculum, we had to accrue a certain number of hours of out-of-class course-related activities. It was a pretty high number of hours, but if you sorta planned to do them over the course of the years, it wasn't so bad. Anyway, there was a list of the activity types you could use to fulfill this requirement: attending conferences, publishing a paper, writing a report on a lecture, etc. But there were caps on the number of hours you could accrue in each category, so you couldn't just do one thing. The highest cap was for law-related internships, almost 50% of the total requirement. So I planned around that, and got into an internship in my final year, which would get me above the required number of hours. You had to log your hours in an online system which required you to fill the beginning and end dates for the activity, and the number of hours you wished to log. As internships here usually don't have a fixed end date, only a maximum of 2 years, but the company or I could terminate it early, I thought I would just file the paperwork as soon as I finished the internship and it would be golden. However, as soon as I did that, the system rejected my request, stating that I should have filed everything before the end of my internship. I figured this was pretty dumb, since anyone logging internship hours wouldn't know the end date or total hours before the end of their internship. So I went to the university's law department, which I thought would immediately correct this obvious mistake, right? Wrong. I basically got told, tough luck, by the professor in charge, and that I should have applied with a fictitious end date and amount of hours if I wasn't sure of when I was going to leave my internship. At this point, I'm super anxious, as this internship represents about 50% of the hours I needed to graduate. I wasn't going to be able to make up for that before my graduation date, and I had already passed the bar exam. In my country, you can take it in your final year of law school. And then it dawned on me. It was so simple I thought it surely wouldn't work. If they wanted me to fill the online form with made-up data, then by all means, that's what I would do. I logged back into the system and filled out the same information for my internship, but I put the end date in the future. When the system approved the request, I submitted my paperwork with a note: as per instructions of Professor Z, I hereby request an amendment to the end date of my internship period according to the attached documents. Got full credit for the hours I needed, graduated on time, have been working as a lawyer for the past 10 years. Thanks for listening.